Hi, everybody. Welcome to Our Sinclair. I'm John.
And I'm Aaron.
And today, Aaron, we're going to be talking about Cabal.
Cabal. All right, man.
Yeah. Now, when I first heard about this game,
Yeah.
I thought it was...
I'm scared to hear where this is going.
I thought it was about... remember Huckleberry Hound?
I do.
Now, I think that he was he used to be like a superhero that would swing like with his guitar.
No. That's a whole different guy. You're talking about El Cabal?
Yeah.
That's what you thought the game was about? No. No. No.
Was that not Huckleberry Hound?
No, that wasn't Huckleberry Hound. That guy was a horse, I believe. Huckleberry Hound's a hound.
You know, now that you say that, I do recall that guy being a horse. Yeah.
You're really quite dumb, aren't you? It's hard to believe you're teaching people. You're talking about molding young minds. Don't teach them about cartoons. You'll be fine.
What was El Cabal's alter ego?
I can't. Oh gosh, what was it? It wasn't Quick Draw McGraw, was it? Was that him?
I think that was a dog, also.
No.
How can you have a quick drawing animal with no opposable fingers? You can't draw with a hoof.
Dude, the animals talk and dance. So you're hung up on the thumbs? They speak. They walk upright. They wear clothes. He's a horse that wears clothes. He plays guitar. How does he do that with no fingers?
These are all good points.
Really didn't think this through, did you? Huckleberry Hound wears a hat. He's from the South. Does that make any sense? Come on. And none of this has a darn thing to do with Cabal. That was an interesting name choice with Cabal.
Does Cabal mean anything as far as you know?
Isn't it like a kind of an evil agreement between two parties? Like they put together like a cabal? Or,
that sounds right.
I could be full of crap on that.
But that has nothing to do with this game.
Quick Draw McGraw. Thank you, Doug. Doug here for the save. No kabong is when he hits people with a guitar. You're like the Honky Tonk Man or Jeff Jarrett. Same
okay.
Thing, yeah.
So Cabal, not El Cabong.
No.
Yeah, that's all. I
You're
was
completely shot now.
I really thought that we were going to have this big talk about how, you know, El Cabong and all that.
You thought this was going to be a real eyebrow raising conversation.
Well, no, I was going to go into the history of Huckleberry Hound and how he played his games.
Go ahead
and
go into it though. We can still go into it. Go ahead, tell me about it. What's his history?
Well, you played Huckleberry Hound.
You don't know anything about Huckleberry Hound.
I was expecting you to inform me.
Listen, I didn't like those old Hanna-Barbera cartoons that much, man. I like the Flintstones and the Jetsons.
Those are all Hanna-Barbera cartoons,
right? But I mean, they went through this phase. All right, so you got your Flintstones, you've got your Jetsons, you got your Scooby-Doos. These are good cartoons. Space Ghost was pretty good.
Speed Buggy?
No, see that you just jumped the shark right there. Then you go into this weird. First of all, they ripped off Scooby-Doo with every one of their properties. You had Jabba Jaws. You had Speed Bug, you had Captain K-Man. They're just rip-offs. Just insert something else for the dog. Mm-hmm. You got a talking shark, you got a talking car, you got a talking whatever, okay? Captain K-Man, whatever the heck he was. He didn't even look like a man. So those all sucked. Then you had all their weird characters.
Amazing Chan and the Chan Clan.
Snaggletooth and Huckleberry Hound and all these weird characters.
The Laugh Olympics crew.
Doggy Daddy.
Yep.
You know, all these guys. And then you had the Laugh Olympics, which I will give them credit. They took all their weird stew of characters and smushed them into teams. At least that was sort of funny. It was
I like that show a lot.
It was a one-trick pony. But, you know, you also had like stuff like the Blue Falcon and Dynamite. That's something else I like to do. They take a cool concept and then stick an idiot with them. I hate when they have a cool guy and he's got a monkey.
Right.
Or a stupid dog. You know, you ruined the cool guy with the crap.
What was the cartoon with, like, the Gloop?
That was Gloop and Gleep and the Herculoids. Herculoids. I did like the Herculoids.
Okay.
Because Gloop and Gleep were dumb, but they were also, like, they could mess you up.
Right.
They were big, weird blobs. They could blob you up.
Yeah.
You know?
That was Hanna-Barbera also, right?
That's right.
Okay.
And then they had that weird, because think about who was in the Herculoids, right? Do you remember? You don't even know. You got Gloop and Gleep.
Okay.
Right? You got the main Herculoid dude. You got his hot chick, all right? That was like, he was like a barbarian.
Is Herculoid, that's not the one that was like in 1997.
No, I'll get to that in a minute. Yeah, I'll get to that in a minute. But then you got him, his hot chick. So he's like a barbarian. She's like a barbarian chick or an Amazon. And then you had his weird crew, okay? He had like a Triceratops combined with a rhino that shot crap out of a horn, right? Whatever that was, armored.
Mm-hmm.
And then you had a dragon they hung out with, and he did stuff.
He didn't speak though.
No, but he didn't have to. He's a freaking dragon. He'd fly down. I think he shot lasers or something out of his mouth. Whatever. It didn't matter. He'd kill you. All right. They were an interesting crew, right? And then you graduated up to when you had Thundar, which was that was a good show.
So that was the top of that particular genre.
In my opinion, you had
like
Thundar,
the post-apocalyptic caveman.
You had it was post-apocalyptic, but he wasn't a caveman.
Well, no, but
he
I
was
mean,
a barbarian.
it seems like people were dressed in a lot of like furs and pelts and things.
He was because he's a barbarian. Because you got to think about it. He hung out with a guy named Ukla the Mock, who was covered in fur. Where did Thundar get his fur? I would ask. I mean,
Ukla's parents?
Well, maybe Ukla sheds a lot or something.
Maybe so.
Then you had, so he had a fabulous sun sword. Then you had Ariel, who was the wizard chick, the hot sorceress that was with him. And because a runaway planet hurtled between the Earth and the Sun, Earth and the Moon, unleashing cosmic destruction. It tore the moon in half, jacked up the Earth. Boy. That was a pretty cool cartoon.
It's a good setup.
Yeah, it was. It was a great cartoon, but it was so violent they took it off the air. It's a bummer when that happens.
Yeah,
that happens some of the good cartoons too. So, but I mean, so that encompasses the Hanna-Barbera of my youth. Oh, I forgot. Oh, that's not true. We've got Johnny Quest. That was also a pretty good show.
That was. I guess that was. How does that fit in with like Snaggletooth and all those guys?
It was Johnny Quest, I believe,
it was early,
the late '60s, early '70s, and they were real well done.
Yeah.
But it's funny because when Cartoon Network got in cahoots with Hanna-Barbera, and they brought a lot of these goofs back for like Space Ghost Coast to Coast, all the wacky stuff they did. Harvey Birdman, Attorney at Law, stuff like that.
I love those shows.
So Hanna-Barbera, it's funny when the close by amusement park to us that's not Cannon Park, is Kings Island, and when I was a kid, Hanna-Barbera, it was the license they had for their little fun world. And I remember that being kind of neat.
Yeah.
So, none of this has anything to do with Cabal. None. So memorize that. It has nothing to do with Huckleberry Hound. That's the stupidest connection you've ever made.
For the last 5 minutes, I've been waiting to just have silence so I can put in the ad. And you just keep going.
Listen, don't poke the bear. I'll talk. You give me any subject, I'll go on for 20 minutes. That's what I do.
Let's talk about Cabal, Aaron.
I find this far less interesting than Hanna-Barbera talk. So, Cabal. I was telling the chat before you came back down with your fancy water that this is one of the games for this that I've actually played in the arcade back in the day. So, Cabal was released in '89 for the ZX. This was authored by an outfit called Special FX Software Limited.
Okay.
Boat.
I can see it.
Now, here's a list of some of the stuff they did. Batman. Remember Batman?
I remember Batman.
Firefly, not the cool space show. Guts with a Z, of course.
Cool guy style.
Hudson Hawk, because that game was on every system ever. Ever.
That game has got to be the movie, like the worst movie with the most licenses.
It may be. Have you ever seen Hudson Hawk?
No.
I knew it. Hyperactive, Hysteria, Midnight Resistance, which we covered, I believe. Red Heat, that's another bad movie. And Toki, which I think you liked Toki when we put it on the Amiga. Now, this was programmed by a pretty legendary guy named Jim Bagley. Have you heard of him?
Mm-mm.
Really? He worked on all the games I just mentioned, plus most of them anyway, plus Roadrunner, Street Sports, basketball, and he worked on World Class Leaderboard Golf, which we both liked.
I love World Class.
Yeah. The graphics were done on this by Charles Davies. He's another guy of some repute. He did Batman. He did the Flight Simulator for the ZX, Guts, Hudson Hawk, a lot of the same stuff we talked about. The music was done by a fellow named Keith Tinman, who worked pretty much on all the stuff we mentioned earlier.
I guess the music, because the music is the title track in the 128K version. There's no in-game music in this.
I played. That's what I got. Again, sometimes it's hard for me to tell, but the version I played had opening music.
If it has opening music, it is the 128K version.
Yeah, that's the one I had. Yeah. So this is now in the arcade. This was a two-player simultaneous game, but on the ZX here, in fact, on most of the home releases, it's a one-player hot or two-player hot seat. So they didn't. I think the only one that got two-player simultaneous, I believe, was the Super Nintendo version of this, or Nintendo, maybe NES.
The
Super
NES
Nintendo version. Yeah, it was the NES. It got two-player simultaneous. Originally, came out on cassette for £9, and the disc version was a hefty 15-pounder, Boatster.
One of the most expensive Spectrum games we've covered.
Well, that is a
15
disc,
pounds.
the disc version,
That's
so
true.
I'm guessing they didn't sell too many. This also came out on the Amiga, the Amstrad, the C64, MS-DOS. I believe the DOS, was that a booter? I'm not sure. And then there was the NES version of this. So before we get too far in this, let's talk about the arcade version, because I like to go into that a little bit since we actually have played the arcade version. In fact, I'd played it well before I'd played this one. Now, this was developed by an outfit called the TAD Corporation.
Okay.
A weird name, and TAD's all caps, so I don't know what, maybe it stands for something in
Initials,
Japanese.
I would guess.
Yeah. Published by Taito or Taito, depending on where you're at. And this came out in the arcade September of '88, so they had a pretty quick turnaround on this thing, Boatster. Ironically, the CPU in the arcade machine is 68,000, so I thought I'd mention that. So, what is Cabal? All right. What you do, this is a unique game. I'm not sure I played anything like it when it came out. You are one or two players in the arcade. You're a guy that has a gun and grenades, and your goal is to shoot as many enemies as you can, as fast as you can.
Right.
And it's laid out almost like an Operation Wolf or something style game, where you are at the bottom of the screen and you have a cursor that moves around the top, it really moves around the whole screen.
Mm-hmm.
And whatever you focus on, you can shoot with your grenade or your bullets.
Right.
Plus, if you let go of the buttons, you can move your guy around, so he can actually move and he can shoot. Which is an unusual gameplay element.
Well, here's what I think.
Okay.
I think that these guys, the TAD boys, that's what they called them, they saw the success of Operation Wolf.
Yeah.
And they were like, well, now we've got this JAMA standard. We've got all these people with these upright, basic arcade outfits with a joystick and a couple buttons. What can we do to give them the same kind of experience so they don't have to buy an Operation Wolf machine? And that's what this is.
Well, the difference, here's the flaw in your plan. All right. This game was a 2-trackball, 4-button game, and I don't know any games that had that set up. So it's gonna be that's a hard conversion. So I'm assuming they would have also shipped you the control panel.
Okay.
I don't know.
I guess I didn't do my research on the arcade version. I figured this was just a joystick and a couple button
Well, it was
game.
both, and
Okay.
I'll get into that. Also, this game, I don't know if I didn't look to see if it was JAM. It may or may not be. I don't know. But irrelevant to our conversation here. So when I played this game, I'm pretty sure it had the trackball version. They had a trackball version and they had a joystick version of this game. Okay. Again, you're moving the cursor around with the whatever you've got. Let's say trackball in the arcade. And so when you put the cursor over something, you tap your button and you shoot whatever the cursor's on. It's a lot like how what it reminds me of is when we play gun games in MAME or something and you use the mouse to move around. It's basically like that. It's a gun game where you don't actually use a gun because it lets you move around. Now, I can tell you when this came in the arcade, I did see it a few times. I did play it. I think I played it once, and I didn't like it. It's so chaotic and weird. These games where we had this perspective, and they never appealed to me that much in the arcade.
It does sort of remind you as like if you had a game like what's it called? It's like the Afterburner game where the scenery is scrolling by. But
G-Lock.
But you're on a jetpack, and this is a super famous game. I just can't think of the name of it. Anyway, it's like I always feel like in this game you should be walking forward. It shouldn't be stationary.
There was a game in the arcade.
Space Harrier. Thank you, Rule of Thirds.
There's a game, I think it was called there were several different types, but like G.I. Joe's one that comes to mind. Where
G.I. Joe's a lot like this,
But I didn't like those
too.
games either, to be honest with you. This game reminds me an awful lot of just like an Operation Wolf, except you can move your guy a little bit. And I don't know how much you moved your guy. We'll talk about that in a minute. I didn't move him a ton when I was playing this, because if I didn't have to. Anyway, in the arcade, you've got 5 stages with 4 screens on each stage. Okay, which that actually came right home. That's exactly the same way it is on the Spectrum. In the arcade, you also had boss fights. Again, same thing. So they pretty much brought a lot of the game home. Really, like I said, the one big difference is you don't have that 2-player simultaneous. So the arcade had good graphics. They were colorful. One of the big things in the arcade is that you had destructible environments. This made the game very unique at the time. when you're out there shooting, you're not just shooting men, you're also shooting helicopters and tanks and trucks, whatever they can come up with that drives across the screen. And the arcade game did well enough to get ported to some systems. From what I read on the net, it was an okay seller. The concept was unique and it did okay. So there you go. I don't remember TAD.
I definitely don't remember ever seeing this in an arcade, and I've never played this in an arcade.
I'm old.
But I've seen tons of. I mean, compared to Operation Wolf, this was not a big success.
Right. So let's flash forward here to the actual Spectrum version. So this game is sort of a famous port in a way because of Jim Bagley's working at. Now he also did Midnight Resistance, like I said, which we looked at a while back, and this game shares some similarities with that, including some of the graphical touches that he used in this. You'll notice that your player has a kind of like a faint outline around them, which is the same way in Midnight Resistance. It helps. It's a graphically to help you differentiate the guys and stuff.
Yeah.
I found a little interview with Bagley when he was talking about this. He talked about one of the things this game has is it's got. I mean, we play a lot of Spectrum games that are almost monochrome. This one has distinct colors. I mean, they did a pretty good job with the background color. Because the funny thing about this game, which we'll get into this more in a minute, a lot of this game is just there are some backgrounds and then stuff goes on in front of them. They don't really, not all levels like that, but a lot of levels, it's just crazy stuff going on a colorful background. But the backgrounds look good. But they asked him how he pulled this off. And what he said was it was clever use of boundaries. Anything that had color, the enemies went behind. So they'd go behind the buildings, you'd shoot the buildings, and they'd crumble away, leaving the sprites. Therefore, the sprites would hardly ever go through 2 changes of color. Also, the arcade game had a bunch of baddies on the screen, and he felt it was important to replicate that. So he would get as much stuff on as possible, but with stuff in the way, he could pile tons of stuff on the screen, make it look like there was a lot going on, and still not have a bunch of slowdown or a bunch of color clash. And
this game, I feel that this game is a programming feat. I feel like they've pulled all the tricks out of the book to make this game work.
I agree, because one of the things you'll be struck with, first of all, we should mention that the loading screen is very attractive. He did a good job on that, which we see that a lot. So when the game comes up, it's a pretty stylish outfit that did it because it's a crazy rainbow menu. A lot of the menus are pretty lame on the Spectrum. This is a pretty colorful menu. It's got a lot. The options are top shelf. I play with the keyboard most of the time, and I did on this one too. And it lets you assign the keys, and you're assigned the 4 directions: a grenade, shooting, and a pause button. Normal stuff. It also has the joystick support. So when you start this game up, the first thing you realize is that there are a ton of guys coming out. I mean, it's crazy, and they never stop. Because the way this game works is, instead of having this, you don't clear a level by just killing all the guys. You finish the level by finishing your enemy kill bar at the bottom of the screen. Is there a better word for that?
Let me explain. So when you're playing a normal game, people are familiar with life bars, and you've got a life bar, and then the boss has a life bar, or the enemy has a life bar. Well, imagine if all of the enemy life bars were contained into one mega life bar, and you've got to make that life bar go down to nothing. So as you kill enemies, you see this life bar going down, and that's how you beat the stage. It's I gotta be honest with you, I liked it. I thought it was a neat concept and much better than just like kill all the guys, or it was something different.
It is different. I remember again when I played this in the arcade. And I'm not gonna sit here and say, well, here were my impressions because I can't remember that far back. I just remember playing it once. I didn't think it was that good and left on. I don't know if I've played a game that had a level completion like this. I'm sure there are some, but the weird thing is just random, like killing as many people as you can. I mean, it doesn't matter who you kill as long as you kill. So I thought that was it is.
Well, even when you start the game, you don't press 0 to start the game. It's just that press 0, kill them.
Yeah. And I was like, man, is this a level change? No, it's just that's how it starts the game. Again, you don't have to shoot 50 guys or 50 helicopters. It's any combination of whatever you get.
Right.
So. As I mentioned in the arcade, one of the big selling points in this was the fact that you had a destructible environment. Do they have that in this game? Well, yes, they do. You'll have buildings, towers, boxes, all kinds of stuff. One of the things I did notice, though, that struck me is that, like, even on the first level, and this happens a lot, like in the arcade and a lot of the ports, you have a wall that you're behind. And not in this game. There's a wall.
There's nothing.
Instantly you're exposed.
Yeah.
But a lot of the levels are pretty close to what you would see in the arcade. Again, you're working with a muted palette here. 3 or 4 colors. But I mean, again, they did a tremendous job separating the colors, and the color clash is at a minimum. So that's good. The guys are, if you look at the arcade game, the guys look like guys running around. They look like this. They are squatty.
They're sort of halflings that are running around.
It's a Hobbit massacre, is what you're saying. One thing that, so I guess we should just get into what we thought. I mean, it's basic gameplay. You move around to try to avoid shots and grenades and whatever's coming at you, and then you try to shoot them with your shots and grenades, and you can pick up special weapons, machine guns and whatnot that do more damage, which is fine. But at the end of the day, this is a move, and well, when I was playing it, this is a move a cursor around the screen with your keyboard game, and then occasionally move yourself. Well, guess what? That stinks. I didn't have any fun moving this game with the cursor. I don't know. I didn't read that this had that Spectrum mouse support, but if they were ever going to make a game that had it, this would be the game, because this would have been a much more fun with a mouse. Now, did you play this with the stick?
I played this with a stick.
And so how did it play with a joystick, moving that cursor around? Because generally my experiences on that sort of have not been good.
Okay, this is a game where we just have totally different opinions.
Okay, I'm not killing it. I just wanted to see what you thought about with the joysticks. I didn't get to try with the stick.
I not only did playing this game with the joystick feel really good, but I love this game. I thought this game was great. I'm surprised to hear that you don't like this game, because this is like everything you love about video games, just mindless, wanton destruction. Think about Walker. I mean, this is like, it's the same concept. You're mowing down dudes until the cows come home.
That's true. But the Walker, the controls were a lot easier for me.
And of course, with the evolution of things like the mouse and things like that, it helps. But here are the things that I liked about this game. Number one, there's a ton of stuff going on the screen.
Yeah.
But I never felt like I was in a situation where it was a bullet hell type. I was dodging things left and right. Like you can survive. In fact, I didn't move around a whole lot, and I got 3 or 4 screens in before I started to die.
Yeah.
And if I would have actually spent some more time moving around, I'm sure I could have done a lot better. As we're watching this, every single one of these scenes is so well drawn and so different from all the other scenes. The way that, like you said, the way that he manages to avoid color crash is insane.
It's very clever.
Yeah, the destructible environments are all very neat. They do as much as the Spectrum can do in terms of, destructible environments. But I just can't get over how well all of these backgrounds are drawn and how different they are. Because when it all comes down to it, you're shooting dudes that come across the screen. There's various types of enemies. It's the other things that make the game special. Now, what did I not like about it? I didn't like the way that you can't use the grenade without touching the keyboard. That's a limitation.
It wasn't a problem for me.
Limitation of the one-button stick. I would have liked to have seen a way to use, because I just never used the grenades, because I couldn't take my hands off the stick. This is not a game you can do that.
What would have been nice is if you could have a long press to throw the grenade.
Yeah, I mean, look at the colors. Look at the 2 different shades of green and the gradation of the trees. The bark on the trees.
The graphics in this are quite good.
This is probably some of the best graphics, just in terms of background art, that I've seen on the Spectrum, period. And it's almost a waste that it was wasted on this sort of mindless shooter. Like, I would have liked to have seen this in a different setting. But it's so, I don't know. I'm a sucker for like well done background art, because background art is not something that you have to do. You can get by with doing the bare minimum. So this game on the whole really, really impressed me.
If you think about it though, a game like this lends itself to having nice backgrounds, because effectively the background is just a picture. And then there's some destructible stuff in front of it. Mm-hmm. So you should have pretty good looking backgrounds. Now, it takes a special guy to get moving graphics on top of these backgrounds, obviously. But you're talking about, and admittedly, this is a guy, to put in perspective, Bagley was involved in the development of the Next, which just came out in the past couple weeks. This guy's like a top of his class. So he's not like he's some kind of scrub.
Right.
He knew what he was doing. Again, for me, Listen, I'm not killing the game. Everything you said, I pretty much agree with. And I played it, and I got halfway far, and I got to like on my best game, I think I got to like the fourth screen. And with practice, I could probably do better. And the boss levels are cool. I went ahead and watched well into it to see what was, how it looked. And I'll do like the levels with the water and some are pretty neat, where the guys come up out of the water. But there's a lot going on, and the black and white graphics for your character, the enemies, the transparencies, and the bullets that all flying, it made it hard for me to see what was going on. It all kind of blended together, and a lot of times it made it confusing for me. On top of that, I just did not like this is one game I definitely don't recommend using keyboard for. I mean, you could do it, and I'm sure people got good at it, but I didn't like it. And I'd much rather have a mouse to use, which I know there's an Amiga version. I looked at some of the footage of that, and it looks pretty good.
It's supposedly the best port.
And I'm sure it uses the mouse, and that's the way to go, because this game was developed as a game where you would use some sort of control device that's not a joystick. And again, joystick games like this often aren't that good. Again, I can't say that with this because I didn't try out with a joystick. But overall, a good looking game. Like I said, it was definitely playable. It's just, for whatever reason, I know this sort of game, and I'm not a big fan of even like Operation Wolf and Operation. It's not necessarily my type of games. It's just some random craziness going on. But I mean, people love it. Now, the Spectrum version had, like I said, it was complete. It had all the levels. The funny thing is, we were talking about the Amiga version. For whatever reason, and I'd read this before, and I'd forgotten about it, but the Amiga and the Atari ST versions don't have level 2. So they actually are missing a level, and they have less levels than the Spectrum version.
Wow.
So despite the fact that it looks great, and I don't know, it may play great, it's not as complete as this version. So, I liked it. It's not what I would go back and play, probably.
One of the things I thought was interesting is that when you complete a level on the Spectrum version, the guy just kind of walks off the screen.
He does. He strides off the screen.
But in the other versions, like the NES version, he actually does a little dance. He goes, woohoo, ba-ba-da-ba.
I hate
And then he jives vertically up the screen.
Yeah, I think I like it better because who does that? What's going on there? I watched that. I was like, what? This one, the guy literally just lumbers off like, Tom, go kill more. I think that's the way I like it personally. But it is what it is. I mean, the one thing about it is it's not hard to get into.
No.
It's a pickup. No. You don't need the docks. You don't need Jack Squad. It's all there. I will say I like the little flourishes, the Hall of Fame and stuff. They did a good job, and like I said, you could tell right when it boots up that whoever worked on this, they knew their stuff. They had the prowess. I looked up some critical reviews of this boat.
Okay.
This may surprise you, but they were pretty good. The World of Spectrum folks give this an 8.02. I actually was kind of surprised it was that low. Crash gave this a 91. The Games Machine gave it an 86. Sinclair User gave it an 84. And CVG gave this a 62. They didn't like it. They didn't like it very much at all. And actually, some of the comments they made, they said this was a lousy choice of color, among other things. And they said it was a poor conversion to the Spectrum. They didn't like it. So, and they also commented it was hard to see what was going on.
Yeah.
So, but I think that score is really low. Now, again, this did come out in '89, so maybe these guys were a little bit spoiled by that point when they were going back to the Spectrum and being like, this is not that good.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's the freaking Spectrum. It's amazing you can get that kind of action out of this, pretty old machine by that date.
I agree. We got some reviews on our Discord channel. Just a reminder that if you support the show on Patreon, you can get access and post your own review. Paul, a.k.a. Hermsky, says, Cabal review, 6 out of 10. Cabal is a vertical shooter reminiscent of a more advanced Space Invaders game. The sound effects are nice as you do battle armed with your gun. Collecting new weapons gives the game a diverse element, reducing the trauma of repetitive shooting. That's true, we didn't talk about the different weapon upgrades you can get.
Yeah, I mentioned it, but yeah, there are several. And I also didn't mention the sound, and actually the sound is pretty good.
It's so funny because you do have auto fire in this game, and it almost provided this soundtrack, because you'd have the and then when the grenades would come in, they go
yeah,
and it, I was having my own little rave.
Well,
it was fun. So
you're raving all right.
Getting back to Paul, However, I didn't like the dual function controls, trying to navigate the crosshair while simultaneously moving your player to dodge hard to see enemy ammunition.
Yeah.
This was never going to end well. Overall, not one of my go-to games of choice for a shoot 'em up. Graham Vebke writes, I actually think this is a decent port of the arcade game, and it stands up against the C64 port I'm most familiar with. Oh, by the way, the C64, this is one of the rare instances, the C64 port it was a totally different game in Europe than it was in the United States.
I saw that. It had 2 different releases.
Yeah.
How bizarre, eh?
He said, this 7 out of 10 game has far more going for it than Operation Wolf, yet that game gets all the praise simply because of that mounted Uzi controller, which is pretty
good,
cool.
Yeah.
When you look into the gameplay, Cabal is the far superior game. There is some strategy involved to complete the stages. You aren't just only needed to manage your clips, and in Cabal you can destroy the environment around your enemy and you. While it's not the greatest shooter, it's certainly my choice for a war-based shooting gallery. The art in the Spectrum version is fantastic for the Spectrum as well. Chris Fold says, this style of game I'm a huge fan of, but I do think Baggers did a cracking job at porting this to the Speccy. The controls take a little getting used to, but once you wrap your head around them, it's fine and the graphics work surprisingly well. For me, however, the game lacks depth, but so does the arcade version.
Yeah.
A fine port, but not a great game to begin with. 6 out of 10.
See, that's sort of the way I feel about it.
Mm-hmm. And finally, Pixels at Dawn writes, this is a very decent port of the arcade original, but unfortunately I'm not a big fan of the original either, being really just a worse-looking single-screen Operation Wolf. It looks and sounds great on the 128K, but the gameplay is pretty much scrolling the reticle left and right as you hold down fire.
Yeah.
The Spectrum version lacks the cool combat rules of the original, and using a joystick is right out because your grenades are out of reach on the keyboard. Plays well enough, but gets boring fast. 6 out of 10.
What do you think of those?
Yeah, I think they all make great points.
But you liked it more.
I like this one. You know, I haven't played a whole lot of these type of shooters on the Speccy, but as far as this type of game in general goes, I had just as much fun with this as I have any other game. And again, I guess I'm just a sucker for looks because having such a different, it's almost like Pang. You remember Pang?
Yeah, I didn't like that either.
So, you know, in Pang, it's basically the same thing over and over, but each stage is a pretty backdrop.
Yeah.
I'm a sucker for the pretty backdrop.
There was a game on, I believe it was the Neo Geo, that was very similar to this. I'm trying to think of what it was. Was it that NAM 1975? Is that what it was?
Yes.
Is that?
Yeah, you're thinking, that's right.
Because I was like, this reminded me so much of something, and I couldn't remember what it was, but I remember it was on the Neo Geo.
Yeah, there are some games that there was a sequel, an official sequel called Blood Brothers that came out in the arcade.
Did you look that? I looked at a little bit of footage of that, and it was Old West.
Yeah.
How bizarre.
Yeah, it was a cowboy and Indian deal.
They went the Lethal Enforcers route with similar results.
Right.
Killing the franchise.
And of course, NAM 1975 is sort of the evolution of this genre, you know, with the Neo Geo trimmings. So.
Oh yeah. I looked this up on the eBay boat. Of course, you're not gonna get this in the States, but if you're lucky enough to be over in the UK, you can get these all day long. I saw them going anywhere between $7 to $30. $30 being the hopefuls. $7 being the realist.
I do want to remind everybody that if you have not, it would really help us out tremendously if you could go over to iTunes and leave us a review for this podcast. Even if you don't use the iTunes podcast player, that so much of the other podcatchers do use that as a base for things like recommendations. So if you enjoy the show, we'd appreciate it if you could leave us a review over there. It would be really great. And I also, of course, Aaron, we really appreciate the people that are watching us live on Twitch. We record the show live around 5:30 every Friday night on twitch.tv/Amigos Retro Gaming. You can join the fine folks like G Webkeys here, TreyGuard82, Pixels at Dawn Gaming, our mod supreme. Polyester Links is here. Go2GoSub. Skjorbjorn and Darkwing 602 is here. Burdette 25159. Nice little crew. Edvin Helland is here. Wishbone. Thank you guys for joining us. And of course, we want to thank all the fine folks that support the show through subscribing on Twitch. Still Adolescing, Bike Me, Chris Folds, La Sooner, Piplo, Go2GoSub, Real Joe the Zombie, Paku Take, Rushi MSX, Frodo NL, Buck Owens, Anguish Auteur, Retro Jerry, Mitsuyama, Brother Bill, The Slow, Norris, Uber Scuba Diver, and G Webkey. If you are an Amazon Prime subscriber, you can support the show and it'll cost you nothing. Just go over to twitch.tv/Amigos Retro Gaming and click subscribe, and your Amazon Prime gives you 1 free sub per month. And finally, Aaron, we thank Boss Man just for being around.
He's the
mostly.
boss, man.
But he also was the chooser of this game. He's a member of Clive's Club.
This seems like a boss man type game. I bet he's awesome at it, too.
He goes to town on this thing. And we want to thank, of course, all of our Patreon supporters. Mark Downey, Hermsky, Andrew Waite, David Spencer, Cap'n Crispy, Laurent Giroux, Gary Heather, Eric Nelson, Harbonaut, Graham Bebke, Frodo NL, Tapes from the Crypt, Pixels at Dawn, Chris Folds, Paul Bossman Harrington, and Christopher Hassall.
Thanks, y'all. Appreciate it.
Next week, Aaron, we're going back to the mystical, magical land of egg that's moving around.
Of what?
An egg that's moving around.
Uh-oh.
It's Magic Land Dizzy.
Uh-oh.
Okay.
We're going to get dizzy again, huh? The twins are back.
We have such a great record with these dizzy games.
This one I'm sure we'll be great at. I feel like we've played enough of these things where we should be getting good at one of them.
I know. Well, Pixels at Dawn chose this one. He'll have to show us some tips over on the Discord. But we will join you next week for another episode of Our Sinclair. Until then, rewind tape.
And press play.